Hey everyone, Aaron here, and today I wanted to show you a new product that I just got from Chameleon Labs. It's actually a local company that makes pro audio gear, a lot of different things, and they were kind enough to send this thing over, and here it is. This is the 7721 stereo VCA compressor. Now, before we move on, if you're brand new to compression and you don't know that much about it, I really highly suggest you go check out my Compressors 101 video that I did a while back. I still think that's a great primer and introduction to kind of just the controls on a compressor and what everything does and things like that. So definitely go watch that video if you haven't. I think there's a lot of good stuff in there. So let's take a look at the controls on this thing. Starting out from left to right, we've got some switches over here on the left-hand side. First of all, we've got our compression in or out, and a nice bright red light there lets you know that when the compression's out, to just sort of alert you, hey, compression's off. Turn it back on if you want to hear compression. Next to that, we've got our knee, hard or soft. Below that, we have our detection mode, peak or RMS. Now, typically compressors operate in peak mode. That is, when they see a peak, like a snare drum or something like that, whap, they will register that peak and they will compress basically based on that. RMS stands for root mean squared, and it's basically more of an average measurement. So if you think about when a compressor is operating, if it's operating based on an average overall level, it's going to be a much more sort of subtle thing. And then to the left of that, we've got our sidechain in and out. There's a separate sidechain input on the back of this unit that you can use to do sidechain stuff, which is cool. Moving on, over here, we've got our high-pass filter, first of all. It goes from 20 hertz all the way to 200 hertz. So the high-pass filter basically tames the low-end input to the compressor. You're still going to be getting all of your low-end on the output, but it's just not going to react so much to low-end input, if that makes sense. Moving on from there, we've got threshold. We've got our attack time. That's how quickly the compressor kicks in. Then we've got our release time right here. Next to that, we've got our ratio here. So we can do, 2 to 1, 4 to 1, 8 to 1, 10 to 1. And then we've got this blend knob. I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but basically we've got all the way from dry to all the way wet, or anywhere in between with 50-50 right there in the middle. And then, of course, we've got our output gain. When you're compressing things, you want to be able to adjust the overall output level. And then lastly, we have this neat little switchable metering here. We've got a nice little VU meter here. And you can choose what you're seeing on that VU with this little knob here. You can choose if you're seeing the left input, the right input, the left or right output, or gain reduction. 99% of the time I keep things on gain reduction because I like to see that needle moving when it's compressing, because that's what tells me that the compressor is working or how hard it's working. Now, let me talk about this blend knob, which is really cool, this thing right here. So this knob blends between the dry signal, so unaffected. Basically, if you have this all the way to the left here on dry, it's basically like a hard bypass. It doesn't matter what other knobs you turn, nothing's going to change because you are set on all the way dry. And then, of course, we've got continuously variable amounts of compression all the way to 100% wet. What I've been finding in practice over the last few weeks as I've been using this is it's just so easy to dial up a sound, because you can dial up maybe even a more aggressive sound than you usually would, and then just dial this blend back a little bit here, to 50% or 60% or whatever, and it's kind of the best of both worlds there, and you don't lose kind of the life and dynamics of your original signal. It's still in there. So this blend knob is just one of my favorite features about this compressor. So I thought we would take a listen to a few tracks. I have this set up right now as an insert in Pro Tools, and I've got a drum track here. Let me just play this for you. I'm going to turn this to all the way dry, so you'll just hear the track as it is right now in Pro Tools. So really basic, really mellow drum track. Let's say I wanted to make that sound a little bit more aggressive. So I've dialed up a little setting on here. I'm going to hit play again, and I'm actually going to record this so you can see the waveform, because there's something really interesting with that. But I'm going to hit play on here, and then I'm going to go between dry here, and then like all the way wet, and then I'll go kind of in between, and you can hear the difference. So you could obviously hear it changing there. To your ears, it may have sounded like maybe it got louder. Obviously, we're hearing the tails of those, snare drums, especially lengthening. But what's really interesting is if you look at this region here in Pro Tools, the peaks of the compressed section are not actually any louder than the uncompressed section. It's just that the waveforms are a little bit longer, and you can see that, visually reflected, basically what the compressor is doing. Let me just hit playback here so you can hear that again and look at the screen here and follow along. Again, it almost sounds like the drummer started to dig in right there and play harder, but obviously we know this is the same drum track. It's like sort of like a magic trick that you can do using a compressor like this. So that's a typical way that I would use it, but I'm just gonna hit play on this again and then just kind of mess with these controls so you can hear the variety of sounds you could get with this thing. So tons of fun. You can get really aggressive with it, or you can be more subtle with it. But the blend knob, you guys, the blend knob, I'm finding this just to be incredibly useful. And it just saves me a lot of time because I don't have to spend a bunch of time tweaking the threshold and the attack and the release to just get them like perfect. If I have this blend set to 50-50 or so, the original dynamics are gonna come through. It's just gonna help it a little bit on the sustain. So really versatile. You can do a ton of stuff with it. All right, so now we're gonna try it on a piano track. So not crazily dynamic there, but you heard it was sort of softer and then it got louder. And so compression is a great thing for something like piano. So I'm gonna play that same section again and mess around with this compressor. My piano, I love the kind of this when you can hear the weight of the thing, the hammers. You know, I've got it mic'd up in there and I've got the front of it off. And so the microphones pick up all this detail. And when you have compression on it, it just brings out all of those little mechanical things, which I just love. When you can hear those hammers moving and the pedals going and squeaking and things like that, a typical person might be like, turn that stuff down. But I'm like, I love that stuff because it makes you feel like you're sitting there at the piano. And so compression can really help you kind of get into the moment. You know, when you can hear those details, it helps you visualize what that person was doing when they were playing that, and it just brings another sense of life and connection to the sound. All right, last up we have a vocal. This is a vocal I just recorded, just for fun. Just like before, we're gonna listen to it with no compression first.
I may never see, dear, or say the words you wanna hear. I can always be the one to swallow my pride. But if you let your walls down, maybe you know how to leave this alone and let it lie, let it lie.
All right, so let's mess around with some compression on this vocal.
I may never see, dear, or say the words you wanna hear. I can always be the one to swallow my pride. But if you let your walls down, maybe you know how to leave this alone and let it lie, let it lie.
Okay, so vocals are notoriously incredibly dynamic, and I was pointing out the VU meter there to show you how much it was reducing the gain. I mean, the needle got to -20, you know, at some points, but then at the ends of phrases, it would let it off. Basically, that's the point, is you're compressing, you're turning down the parts that are really dynamic and big, and then in turn, you know, through the output control, you're turning up all of those nice little tender moments. All right, and the last example I've got is a full mix here. This has a really soft section followed by a big loud section where a band comes in. So let's just play it 100% dry here. Here we go.
You can come out of the shadows. You can live life like it matters. I'll be waiting for you. Stop living someone else's life. Stop chasing someone else's dream.
So moments like that, when it goes from really soft to really loud, prime candidate for something like this compressor. So let's play it again and dial up some sounds on this thing.
You can come out of the shadows. You can live life like it matters. I'll be waiting for you. Stop living someone else's life. Stop chasing someone else's dream. No wonder nothing ever feels right.
Again, it's going to be most evident actually in the softer section where it's going to lift that compared to what it was. So I'm going to play it again. I'm going to hit record here so we can look at the waveform in Pro Tools.
You can come out of the shadows. You can live life like it matters. I'll be waiting for you. Stop living someone else's life. Stop chasing someone else's dream. No wonder nothing ever feels right. Living someone else's life.
So really useful for something like that. I'm going to play that big section again, and I'm just going to mess around with some of the controls that I haven't used yet, just so you can hear what they do. And we'll go ahead and put it on 100% wet here so you can hear the full effect.
I'll be waiting for you. Stop living someone else's life. Stop chasing someone else's dreams. No wonder nothing ever feels right. Living someone else's
You know, really interesting with that RMS detection there. When I turned that on, I had to bring my threshold way down, obviously, because it wasn't hearing or it wasn't detecting, it wasn't compressing based on those big peaks. So it was letting a lot more through. So I had to actually bring the threshold down, you know, in comparison in order for it to compress more. But a really useful feature if you want a more subtle approach. So I have been just really loving this thing. Thanks again so much to Chameleon Labs for sending it out for me to check out and use. So go check out Chameleon Labs at their website at chameleonlabs.com. They've got a few other products as well, some preamps and some 500 series stuff. Great local company, highly recommended. All right, thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments below, and we'll see you all next time.